Scott Laughlin, we've been talking about grapes. We've been talking about people getting furloughed. Can I ask you this, Scott, before we go any further? Is there a spot on SiriusXM NHL radio for Don Cherry? Because frankly, we had him on yesterday. He's feeling a little forgotten and left out, and it's hard to believe that he would actually think that about himself, but he does.
Well, it's a fact to follow, obviously, Rod. I mean, it's great to be back with you once again. And you talk about, great Canadian personalities. Some had talked about him as a Hockey Hall of Famer. Certainly, it's been an interesting last couple of months. Regardless of how you feel about everything that was said and what his legacy is, I think there's no question about it that Hockey Night in Canada is completely different since he's left.
Yeah, no doubt. So to Stanley Cup playoffs. Do you ever get tired of talking hockey, Scott, since it's your job? Do you?
Honestly, Rod, every once in a while, yeah, we do. I mean, it's like, you and your buddies going out. And on a Friday night, I mean, sometimes the last thing you want to do is talk about your job, so to speak. And even though we love sports with a passion, I mean, I'll go out with some buddies on a weekend or something. Hey, how about those Leafs? How about this? How about that? And I'm thinking, guys, let me just shut down from hockey for a little bit. I talk about it continuously, day after day, week after week. I love it. But, yeah, truthfully, Rod, there is a point in time where you have to shut everything off. And I know that's something you realize as well.
Oh, absolutely. But two quick stories come to mind. One, I was renting a car in Spokane, Washington with Curtis Hunt. He was the head coach of the Regina Pats. We were driving down to Tri-City to pre-scout a game. First thing he did was dial up at Channel 88 to get NHL radio. You know Curtis Hunt, former assistant coach of the Ottawa Senators and now the GM of the Prince Albert Raiders. You have the hockey people locked down. And that comes with its positives and negatives, right? Because they don't always like everything that you say, but at least you know they're always listening. And were you not the guy on the air when Wayne Gretzky called in? I'm sure I was listening live when Gretzky called in from Los Angeles. It was during the Stanley Cup final. You were on the air. Can you tell that story?
Well, we've had a couple of occasions, don't mean to give ourselves the Barry Horowitz pat on the back here, but we've had a couple of occasions where Wayne has actually picked up the phone. And, years ago, I used to do the show with Espo. So Wayne would text Phil Esposito during one of our commercial breaks, and he would say, hey, I'd like to come on. And I said to Espo, well, what are we waiting for? Let's put him on in the next segment. It's like, when the president, the prime minister, whomever wants to come on and speak, you give them the avenue with which to do so. So there have been many times throughout the years, whether it's with Espo or with Matthew Barnaby, whomever, where Wayne has said, I just feel like talking hockey. Can I come on? Yeah, sure, Wayne. Yeah, why not? Help yourself to it here. We'd love to have your input. So it's amazing who's listening out there. And I know with your show as well, Rod, sometimes you don't even realize when you see cameras and microphones just exactly who you're affecting and what your reach is. But when situations like that happen, where a guy like number 99 wants to come on, I think it really hits home the impact that you've had and the words that you're saying that are actually heard for people.
Oh, there's no doubt. And I think it was either 2012 or 2014, whatever years LA won the Stanley Cup. You were hosting, and you said, it says Wayne Gretzky's call. Is it? Let's put him on the air. And you could tell his voice immediately. And he's like, hey, guys, I'm just driving around the hills of L.A. Just wanted to call. I was listening, thought I'd call it. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. But anyways.
Yeah, stories about him too, Rod. Sitting in his driveway because he's got XM in his car. Wayne Gretzky, the greatest of all time, sitting in his driveway. And we're delaying the entry of him to his home because he wants to hear a segment finish up. I mean, when you start to hear things like that, again, it does hit home just the impact that you've had on people and actually who might be listening here and there.
That's pretty cool. So my thing is the Vegas goalie controversy. I don't know what your take is. How much time have you dedicated to that, Scott, on will we see the Flower again in a prominent role in these playoffs? And then will we see him past 2020, do you think, in Vegas?
Well, look, I think the controversy is starting to die down, and that's a credit to Robin Lehner as to how well he's played. He's got 4 shutouts in the playoffs now after a pretty much pedestrian shutout last night because, let's face it, the Stars didn't have much in the way of pushback. I think that's starting to quiet down now just because of the fact that Lehner's played so well. He's made Peter DeBoer look very good with the decision he has made. I was quite surprised from the get-go. I think we talked about it before, Rod. I was quite surprised that Marc-Andre Fleury was not given more respect given his resume and his track record. I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer someday with the Stanley Cup championships that he can boast. I was surprised that when he was hurt and they were back in training camp, that he was having to field questions about a goaltending competition. To his credit, Marc-Andre Fleury said, okay, I'm all for a competition. As it turns out, Peter DeBoer, the head coach, had some eyes for Robin Lehner. This was not Gerard Gallant, who had a previous working relationship with Marc-Andre Fleury and had all the success that he had with him out there in Vegas. This was a situation where they kind of started afresh. They started afresh with Robin Lehner, and I think so far he has actually proven his head coach to be bang on the mark with his decision. As to whether or not Marc-Andre Fleury is in Vegas beyond this season, I would highly doubt it. I think that he's made his decision right now. He's made his bet. He's going to have to line it. I think they'll open up the Brinks truck here and sign Robin Lehner on a multi-year contract, and they'll find a new home for Marc-Andre Fleury. He'll go to his next stop, and I'm sure will be the number one goaltender wherever he does end up. I was surprised it was a competition to begin with, but right now it's pretty clear who's won that competition.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I don't know, who is your favorite team, by the way? Is it the Leafs, Scott?
I don't have a favorite team, Rod. As surprising as that sounds, I grew up a diehard fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs growing up in the city of Toronto. I was a diehard fan of the Leafs. I lived and died with every win and loss and tie back in the day when we used to have those that this team could bring forth. There were times I pained through a lot of the 1980s with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Borje Salming was my hockey idol growing up in the city as a kid. Then I started to work in this business at the age of 22 back in 1992. And I think that's when everything changed, because I recognized that, hey, Chris Chelios is not such a bad guy. I had a chance to meet him. He seems like he's pretty cool. Jeremy Roenick, Mike Modano, et cetera, these guys are actually pretty cool guys. Then when I started to work at NHL Network Radio some 15 years ago, and we talked about each and every one of the 31 teams, soon to be 32 teams, I certainly saw everything from a totally different perspective. So I would say at this point, and this is the God's honest truth, I'm a hockey fan. I could care less really who wins the Stanley Cup. I just hope to watch some great hockey. I think there's some great stories and some great people involved in the game. And I think that's what I'm all about in 2020. It's just about cheering for people and cheering for certain storylines as compared to way back when, before I started in this business, when I clearly cheered for the blue and white.
Well, I'm kind of at that precipice in my life where after 20 years with the Rough Riders, but being one of the few voices in the CFL now talking about it at this time of the year, I got to shed that Rider allegiance and be the CFL guy, which is cool. It's just weird after 20 years of your brain thinking one way. So speaking of the good stories, one, Gary in Winnipeg's watching. He says the NHL's to announce Coach of the Year tonight. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on who that'll be?
I think it's going to be John Tortorella. The reason for that is he lost a lot during the offseason. That's been well documented. No Bobrovsky, no Panarin, and they lost more than 400 man games due to injury this past season. They had key guys go out: Seth Jones, Zach Werenski, Josh Anderson, the big power forward up front. I think he did a remarkable job. And other than the time when he led the Tampa Bay Lightning to the Stanley Cup championship back in 2004, Rod, I think you could make the case that this was his best coaching job ever. We were joking on our program today that wouldn't it be something if John Tortorella was given the Jack Adams Award as Coach of the Year, showed up, took one question and said, you know what, guys, I'm through with the nicey nice. I hope everybody stays safe. He walks off the podium, returns only moments later. Hey, the joke's on me. The joke's on you. Let's move forward. I'm more than happy to get the award. But in all seriousness, I think that John Tortorella edges out Alain Vigneault for the award. Bruce Cassidy, you could also make the case when you expected Boston to have a Stanley Cup letdown during the regular season. They did anything but. They were the best team during the regular season from day one onwards. But I think when it's all said and done, John Tortorella should be, and I think will be, the Coach of the Year, the Jack Adams Award winner for 2019-2020. It's
hilarious you say that. Have you met Tortorella? Because I have not. Do you have any personal relationship? Yeah, and is he a good guy?
Yeah, I've got a. Yeah. You see him outside the arena, and he's a totally different guy. Take it from me. A couple of stories quickly for you, Rod. When I was at All-Star Weekend in Ottawa years ago, I walked into the lobby of the Chateau Laurier. There was some sort of news conference we had to attend for All-Star Weekend. And as I walked into the lobby, I looked across the lobby, and I saw John Tortorella helping an elderly lady across the lobby. And I'm thinking to myself, if listeners and viewers could only see John Tortorella in this light, here he is with his arm out, holding an elderly lady who may or may not have been his grandmother, I'm not sure, across the lobby, you would have seen him in an entirely different light. And I got another story as well from when we were on the air for the first time right around 2005, 2006. And I went down to the Air Canada Center. I was covering a game day skate. We did our scrum with John Tortorella, then the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course. And as I left the arena, I'm standing on the corner of Lakeshore and Bay, right there outside the arena. And John Tortorella is standing there at the light with me. So I figured I'd go up and introduce myself to him, seeing as we just fired a bunch of questions at him in a scrum. And I talked to him and introduced myself and told him what I did. And, I'm having the time of my life. I'm doing the morning show. Mike Bossy's on with us a couple of times each week. Denny Potvin comes on a couple of times with us each week. And, he couldn't have been more impressed. He was like, man, of course you're having a great time. It's Dennis freaking Potvin and Mike freaking Bossy. Of course you're having a great time. I got to tell you, Rod, he was more interested in what I did. He was more interested in my career, what I was doing on a daily basis with XM Radio back then, than he was about talking about himself as the head coach of a good team in the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that showed me a lot about him. It showed me a different side of him, perhaps a side that people don't see, because when he's in the confines of the arena itself, as we know, he's tightly wound, he's intense. I mean, there's no getting away from that. But when you get him outside the arena, you get a chance to have a conversation with him, I think people would see him in an entirely different light.
Great stories. I honestly could go on all day, but I won't. I'll let you go. But just one from Mike Blackbird in Toronto. He says, do you think Price will move from Montreal? What are you hearing there?
Well, I mean, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're thinking, well, he's going to find his way to Seattle and he'll be exposed in the expansion draft, and that's why they get Jake Allen. Jake Allen and Caden Primo a couple of years from now will be that 1-2 punch in Montreal. Now, Jake Allen's got 1 year left on his contract, so he might be a one and done with the Canadiens for all we know. Or if they need some more time for some seasoning for Caden Primo and Laval, they could always re-up and extend with a guy like Jake Allen. To answer the question, I think Carey Price is going to be a Montreal Canadian for his entire career. I know there's a significant term still left on that contract, but I think with what we saw from him in the postseason, it leads you to believe that he still has a lot left to give. And I think Montreal, for them to be a playoff team coming up next season, whenever next season starts, Rod, I think a lot of it, once again, stop me if you've heard this before, it's going to be on the big back of CP31. I think that Carey Price is in Montreal next season, and he's going to be in Montreal for the rest of his career. That's what I think will happen.
He's the best goalie in the NHL until somebody proves otherwise. That's just a fact, right? So anyway, Scott, again, I could go on all day. I'll stop right there. Keep up the good work, pal, and thanks for the time today.
Anytime. Thank you, Rod.
All right, Scott Laughlin from SiriusXM NHL, Channel 88. Love it.
Oh, yeah.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.